Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. But for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance! Valentina Sosa felt the floor shift beneath her heels. It wasn't gradual. It was a jolt. At the exact moment, 200 heads swiveled towards the marble staircase of the grand ballroom at the Palacio Real, and silence crushed the music, the clinking glasses, the conversations, everything. Daniela Arrived stood at the top of the steps, and the dress she wore was impossible. There was no other word. Impossible. A skirt that flared from the waist, as if time itself had been frozen, crafted from champagne-colored silk that shimmered under the chandeliers like liquid silver, something that looked less like clothing and more like architecture. Thousands of hand-sewn crystals adorned the bodice, cascading downwards in streams that continued to gleam even when she stood still. The train began 10 feet behind her, flowing down the staircase on its own, step by agonizing step. It was the closing gown from Adisa Osei's Luxe Africana collection, the one a museum in Amsterdam had tried to acquire, the one the family had never sold. It was worth $3 million, and Daniela, the very Daniela who had ironed Valentina's blouses that morning, was wearing it. 3 days prior, Valentina had stood on the threshold of the laundry room, Claudia and Marcella behind her, watching Daniela fold tablecloths with that infuriating concentration. She'd waited for Daniela to look up. Then she'd said, in that particular tone she used when she wanted something to hurt without appearing to, "Daniela, I have an extra place at my table for the Palacio Gala this Saturday, the most important event of the year. I thought you deserved a different kind of night." A deliberate pause. "Wear whatever you have. I'm sure you'll find something suitable." Claudia and Marcella waited until they were down the hall before erupting in laughter. Daniela hadn't laughed. She'd waited for their footsteps to fade, slowly put away the tablecloths, taken her phone from her apron, and dialed a number she hadn't touched in 8 months. "Mama," she'd said when it was answered, "I need the dress now." And now she stood at the top of that staircase, and Valentina, rooted to the center of the ballroom with her navy Valentino and her Dubai necklace, understood in that instant that she had made the most costly mistake of her life. Valentina Sosa was 46, blonde, owner of Grupo Sosa, one of Latin America's most significant fashion and luxury conglomerates. She knew how to enter a room and how to own it. She also knew how to wound someone without soiling her gloves. She had spent years perfecting that art. Daniela had been her most recent exercise for 8 months. Daniela Arrived was 26, with dark olive skin and black hair pulled into a bun that night, looked sculpted from charcoal and light. She was Adisa Osei's only daughter. If that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, you're not in the industry. Adisa had built the most respected design house on the African continent, and one of the most influential in the world, from a rented workshop in Lagos. Museums cataloged her collections as art. Daniela had grown up immersed in that world. Private schools, apartments in Lagos, Paris, Mexico City. Her name opened doors before she'd even finished uttering it. That was precisely the problem. At 24, she'd realized she didn't know who she was without the surname. Every friendship, every opportunity, every room she'd entered in her life had come through the gateway of being Adisa's daughter. So she'd made a pact with her mother. A full year of anonymity, no family accounts, no using the Osei name. A real job in a real city, starting from scratch. One condition: if she ever truly needed her, her mother would be there in less than 24 hours. Daniela chose Mexico City. She found a domestic services agency. She moved into a studio apartment with secondhand furniture and a mattress that was too soft. She learned what tired feet felt like. She learned what it meant to be invisible. To stand in a room and have people look at you without seeing you, through you, around you. People like Valentina, who spoke to her as one would speak to a piece of furniture. She had planned to complete the entire year. Then Valentina had appeared at the threshold with that smile. From where you are watching this story, write it in the comments. 3 days before the gala, Valentina had gathered Claudia and Marcella in the living room before Daniela arrived. It wasn't a work meeting, it was prep. When Daniela entered with her order pad, the 3 of them were already seated. "Sit for a moment," Valentina said. Daniela perched on the edge of the chair. "I have a free ticket to the Palacio Gala." Valentina crossed her legs. The most important charity event of the year. The city's finest, its most influential entrepreneurs, its most renowned fashion designers. A pause. "I want you to go." Daniela looked at her, unblinking. "The couvert normally costs 8,000 pesos, but I have it available." Valentina's eyes glinted faintly. "Wear something beautiful, whatever you have. I'm sure you'll find something appropriate." Claudia hid her smile behind her glass. Marcella lowered her gaze to her phone. "How kind," Daniela said softly. "It's the least I could do," Valentina replied. Daniela thanked her with a brief nod, gathered her pad, and left. Doña Esperanza, the housekeeper, found her in the hallway 5 minutes later. "Are you going?" she asked quietly. "Yes." The woman frowned. "Child, she wants to be seen, for everyone to know who you are and who she is." "I know," Daniela said, and continued walking. That night, it took her 15 minutes to dial the number, not because she was hesitating, but because she wanted to be sure it was what she wanted to do. When her mother answered, there was the muffled sound of a studio in the background. "Mama, I need the white dress." A short silence. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I've finished what I had to finish." Adissa Ose asked, no unnecessary questions. "I'll have it sent tomorrow." The package arrived the next day in a black car, with her mother's chauffeur and 4 other people. The lead stylist, 2 assistants, and a makeup artist. They ascended to the studio without a word about the second-hand furniture. Her mother had sent them, knowing exactly where her daughter lived. The dress emerged from its garment bag like a living thing. The crystals captured the studio light and threw it back against the walls in moving points of light across the ceiling. Daniela had seen it once before, at the closing of the Lux Africana show in Milan, under the stage lights. Critics had called it architectural poetry. A museum in Amsterdam had offered to buy it. Her mother had kept it. Now it was in an apartment with a concrete floor. There was a handwritten note in the garment bag. "You were never invisible. You simply chose to remain silent. Come home when you're ready. Mom." Daniela folded the note and tucked it into the pocket of her robe. 5 hours later, she looked in the mirror and recognized someone who had been waiting for 8 months to return. If these stories grip you, stay. There's more, and none of it is filler. The grand ballroom of the Palacio Real was exactly the kind of place Valentina needed to be reminded of who she was. 300 people, tables laden with imported flowers and bohemian crystal. Live musicians on the mezzanine. Mexico City's elite distributed throughout the space with the effortless grace of people accustomed to sharing the same air. Valentina arrived 45 minutes early. Claudia and Marcella arrived 10 minutes later. The 3 of them had been dissecting this moment since Wednesday. "Do you think she'll come?" Marcella asked. "She'll come," Valentina said. "I know her. She's one of those who believes attitude can compensate for an outfit." They had calculated everything. Daniela's work clothes, the little that was visible of them on her workdays, were precisely what corresponded to someone with that salary and 2 days' notice. Valentina had reviewed every variable. The only one she hadn't reviewed was that Daniela might not be who she thought she was. At 9:12, someone dropped a glass. It was the sound of crystal against marble, a common accident. But the waiter who dropped it didn't pick it up. He stood there, tray tilted, staring at the staircase, his face slack in a way that didn't align with his training. A second later, a young guest's phone went up. Then another. Then 3 more, uncoordinated, pure instinct. Valentina turned. The first thing she processed was the light. Something at the top of the stairs was reflecting the chandeliers, in a way that didn't correspond to any dress in the room. Too much sparkle, too much movement. The second was the silhouette. The skirt filled the width of the staircase, and the train followed each step with a fluidity that seemed designed by someone who understood physics as well as sewing. The third was the face. Daniela, her Daniela. The floor tilted. To her left, a man Valentina recognized as an editor for an international publication murmured something into the ear of the man next to him. The 2 of them looked at the staircase, then at Valentina, then back at the staircase. Near the entrance, a security guard, who had remained immobile all night, turned his head involuntarily. Claudia squeezed Valentina's arm without realizing it. Val, who is that?" Valentina didn't answer. She tried to maintain a neutral expression, the social tic of someone in control, but the muscles in her face didn't quite obey. Daniela reached the foot of the stairs, and the ballroom parted for her without anyone coordinating it. People simply moved aside. Through that strange physics that occurs when something moves through a space and the space doesn't quite know how to contain it, she walked without urgency, without performance, without a single triumphant glance. 2 meters from Valentina, A woman in a red dress whispered something to her companion. The companion nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the dress's crystals. Further back, someone asked in a barely audible voice, "Is that an Adiza dress?" Daniela stopped in front of Valentina. "Señora Sosa," her voice was warm. "Thank you so much for the invitation. It was very generous of you." Valentina opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You told me to wear whatever I had." Daniela grazed the fabric at her waist, a natural gesture. "I hope it's suitable for the occasion." Someone near the bar let out a short, involuntary laugh that was immediately cut off. Claudia found her voice first, barely. "That dress. I was at the Milan show. That dress is the finale. My mother made it," Daniela said. Silence. "Your mother?" Claudia's voice cracked. "Adiza OC." Without emphasis, as if mentioning something meteorological. "Perhaps you know her." The ballroom didn't erupt at once. It was in waves. A stifled gasp, then a murmur, then the full sound of 300 people, reconfiguring everything they thought they knew. 4 phones photographed the dress simultaneously. The editor from the international publication moved towards Daniela before the murmur had even finished spreading. Behind him, the cultural director of an embassy, the president of the event's charity foundation. Valentina stood in the center of it, like someone caught in the eye of a storm that, unlike storms, wasn't swirling around her. Daniela was looking directly at her. What happened in the next 20 minutes was a reversal that Valentina had no manual for managing. The editors, the brand directors, the representatives of international houses she'd spent years trying to cultivate as contacts, gravitated towards Daniela as if pulled by a thread, all of them leaning in, touching the fabric, asking for numbers, recalling Milan with genuine emotion. Valentina walked to the bar and ordered water. Her husband Rodrigo appeared at her side 3 minutes later. 49 years old, 5 established companies. The kind of man who says everything important without changing his expression much. "Explain to me what happened," he said in a low voice. "I didn't know who she was, that's obvious." Rodrigo barely turned his head. "What did you do to her?" Valentina didn't answer. "You gave her the invitation as a taunt," he said. "It wasn't a question. And she turned out to be Adiza OC's daughter." "I didn't know that, Rodrigo." "That changes your intention. It doesn't change what you did." His voice didn't rise in tone. "The Ose family has connections with the 3 European funds we've been trying to meet with for 18 months. Adiza is on the board of 2 foundations we want to work with." A pause. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you did?" Valentina squeezed the glass. "Fix it tonight," Rodrigo said. "Or tomorrow, you'll fix it alone." He walked away. Valentina stayed by the bar. She hadn't felt this way in years. To stand in a room full of people she knew and wish she wasn't there. To occupy space, and for that space to be a problem. She had seen it happen many times. Always from the other side. Doña Esperanza, who had come that night as part of the hotel's service staff, saw her from the back of the room and had to lean against the wall. Not from shock, but from relief. Near the mezzanine, the editor stopped Daniela. "The dress is the closing piece from Lux Africana. I was in Milan. I never thought I'd see it again outside a display case. My mother brought it from Lagos," Daniela said. "Does Adiza know you're here? She sent me the dress." The man looked at her a second longer than necessary. "May I ask why you were working as a domestic employee?" "I needed to know who I was without the surname." The editor nodded slowly and asked no more. The foundation's president approached Valentina around 11. "Your employee is extraordinary. I didn't know the OCA family had a presence in the city." "She's not my employee anymore," Valentina said. "It came out on its own. She was. No longer." The president raised her eyebrows and excused herself politely. "From what part of the world are you watching me? Write it in the comments." Valentina waited for the group around Daniela to disperse. She walked towards her, rehearsing words that dissolved with each step. When she stood in front of her, the words were gone entirely. "I'm sorry," she said. Just that. Raw and shapeless. Daniela looked at her unhurriedly. "The invitation, the way I made it, what I said." Valentina held her gaze, though it was difficult. "I wanted to humiliate her, that was the plan. And I've treated her badly for 8 months." A long silence. "Why?" Daniela asked. Not accusatory. Genuinely. Valentina opened her mouth. The honest answer was small and embarrassing. "Because I thought I could." Because it seemed safe to treat her that way. She didn't have to say it. Daniela read it anyway. "I forgive you," she said after a moment. But I need you to understand something. You didn't hurt me because I happen to be the daughter of someone important. You hurt me because I'm a person. That was reason enough from the start. Her eyes were direct but not cruel. What tonight showed you isn't that you picked the wrong victim, it's what you do when you think there are no consequences. That's what you have to carry. Valentina said nothing. I'm going to be fine, Daniela continued. I was always going to be fine. It was the most uncomfortable truth anyone had told her in years. Not because of cruelty, but because of accuracy. Valentina nodded once. Daniela returned to the room. The night continued. The speeches, the auction, the desserts, no one finished. But the center of gravity in the room was no longer where Valentina was accustomed to it being. Rodrigo approached Valentina one last time. Did you speak with her? Yes. And? She told me what she deserved to hear. Valentina placed her glass on the table. Not what I expected. Rodrigo looked at her for a second. Something in his expression shifted, barely. Good, he said and left. Outside at the entrance, Doña Esperanza handed Daniela her coat. Her eyes were bright. Child, I've been in this job for 30 years. A pause. I've never seen anything like it. Daniela hugged her without a word. If this felt fair to you, leave your like. Sometimes that's enough. 2 days later, Daniela was finishing packing up the studio. A small operation. She had arrived with almost nothing and accumulated little. What was surprising was how much of it she wouldn't miss. The money? No. The surname? No. The ease with which all doors opened before she even knocked. What she did miss was her mother's voice. The scent of the design studio. That specific joy of seeing someone wear a garment that makes them feel, for the first time, exactly like themselves. Someone knocked. Valentina Sosa was in the hallway. Without the Valentino, without the Dubai necklace. Jeans, a simple jacket, her hair carelessly pulled back. A woman who looked smaller than in the ballroom.